Well, it's a shocking day in Canberra today, but it is a lovely day inside to be looking at deep linking in the Angular router, which is what we're tackling today on day 12. Well, in yesterday's show, we started our routing operation where we could operate on our menu items and route around our applications. We saw the URL bar change and we implemented the basics of our top level routing. Today we're going to go the next level down where we not only drill inside friends, but then inside an individual friend, inside friends, we'll have some sort of permalink here that we can link to that particular friend. So first of all, let's implement our friends view. That gives us at least a base place to start from. So I'm just going to copy and paste some code I've got here that really just calls out to our feed service to go and fetch our friends, and then we will have something to display in this view. Now we haven't got a get friends method yet. That's going to be next on our list. We better implement that, and that's going to be in our friend service, feed service. So let's go in our feed service and we'll add a new method. That's just going to return an array of strings, which will be our friends. Obviously, we'd go to some backend service typically to do this, but for today's testing, that would be ample to get us a sense of moving forward. Okay, so now we can go off when our friends component sparks up. It can fetch our list of friends, but of course, the view has nothing to display yet because we haven't updated our actual layout. So let's do that now. Again, I'm just going to pretty much copy and paste a version of what we did for messages, but this time for friends. We'll save that, and then that will iterate over our list of friends and display a list of friends here. Obviously, I haven't got any GIFs for these guys yet, but that's okay. That gives us at least a start on what we are populating. Now, what I'd like to do in today's episode is not only be able to navigate to /friends, but to be able to navigate to /Flen/Joe or /friends/Mary, and be able to actually navigate down to some details about these people. But for us to be able to do that, we'll first of all need a friend component that we can navigate to. So let's just do our ng generate component, and we'll create a friend component. So we've got a friend component now, and if we open up our list, we'll have a friend component. Excellent, and some matching backing logic. Okay, terrific. All right, well, now we've got a friend component. Perhaps we'll update our routing rules to see how we might do this sort of dynamic navigation element. So I'll show you how to do that by opening up app routing TS, and we are going to first of all import our friend component because we're going to need that friend component. Then we are going to create a navigation line here that navigates us deep into friends. So we have our friend here. Now this new element we're adding, which navigates to our friend component rather than our friends component, it has this colon followed by a parameter holder. So this is really just a placeholder element. So when I navigate on the URL bar, and I'm going to go to /friends, for instance, /Glenn, it's going to pull out the Glenn portion here and populate it in a parameter called friend ID, which we're going to be able to fetch a little later on in our actual backing component. In fact, why don't we do that right now? We've got our new friend component, so we'll open that up in TypeScript, and we'll need to have here a friend ID that we're going to catch this in, and we're going to inject in our constructor here a handle to the actual activated route. So this is again going to be injected by Angular for us, activated route, and we're going to have to import activated route, and I think it's in at Angular router, I think it's from. Okay, great. So we've got our activated route. That's going to be injected here. Now there's just the small business of going and fetching that parameter once it's actually been injected. So this is where things get a little tiny bit hairy, because all of this router param stuff is based around observables, which is kind of new and head spinny for most of us. But the general gist, which we'll break this down a bit further in a future episode when we look specifically at reactive programming and observables, is that we're going to take this parameters, which is an observable of params, and then we are going to extract the friend ID from it. We're going to filter down to that's the one that we want to listen for. And when that arrives, we're going to subscribe and get a callback here. That's going to be invoked, which is we're then going to assign that incoming friend ID parameter to our actual this property. So we've got something we can reference in the view. So if this bends your mind a little bit, just put that on the back burner for now, because we will look in depth at observables in a few days' time when we start digging into HTTP. So that's just for now, extracting our friend ID and applying it to a local friend ID property on this component. So once we have that, we can output it in our view. So I'm just going to update our view. So we output that value here, and there we go. We have a friend ID, and we're going to output that as our deep permalink. Okay, so nearly everything that we need is in place. The one thing that's missing is how do we actually activate the router to get this dynamic value? Well, for that bit, we're going to actually have to change the link in this list of people here. We've got our details element here. We're going to have to update that. So let's grab our friends component HTML, and we'll find out this is our link to our friend, and here's where we're going to have our details. What we're going to put in here is this router link declaration that we had before, and we are going to now permalink it to /friends/friend lowercase in our case. So we're actually going to link that through. In fact, we don't even need a lowercase because we don't really use it for anything other than output. So we can link it to our friend. And then if we were to do that, when this refreshes, we'll see if we were to hover over this link, we'll begin to see that this details element, which you probably can't see at home, in the fine print says /friend/Joe and /friend/Mary. And if I was to click on that, it'll navigate through to /friends/Mary. If I was to go back, click on Joe, /friends/Joe. That parameter gets all the way passed all the way through to our friend component, which we then subscribe to the parameters, and we listen for one called friend ID. When one arrives, we assign it, and when we output this component, we'll see that this friend is friend ID, which is what we're seeing here. So those are the basics of deep linking into a component tree. Of course, you could take this value now, and if you were going directly to that, Angular will look after the routing to take you deep into the application exactly where we had specified it in the router config. So that's an overview of deep linking. And pretty much wraps up our overview of the router. We'll circle back one more time later in the course when we start looking at authentication. And we're going to start next week looking at HTTP and doing some asynchronous operations with real backend services. Gives us a chance to talk about observables and some error handling. It's going to be great.